Here's my character, Taylor Swift. She's level 56. I've been playing, according to this, about 55 hours. It's highly imaginative visually. It's no way as imaginative as Bloodborne in terms of monster design or world design. The world is very similar, very samey, but that's its weakest part. If I had a gun to my head and someone said, you have to pick your favorite game of all time, I would be stunned if it doesn't end up being Elden Ring. Elden Ring is just phenomenal, and I want to talk to you about why I think that is. I think there's a lot of Metal Gear Solid, specifically Metal Gear Solid 4. It's as much Metal Gear Solid 4 to me, and that's why I love it as it is Bloodborne. And I finished Bloodborne last week, and I played the shit out of Demon Souls. I'm not a good player. I'm not a Souls player. I didn't want to play something punishingly hard. But let me tell you why this game is so fucking awesome. So the first thing is people were saying, well, we don't know if, and people are still saying this, although I think this game proves that they're wrong, would a Souls game work in an open world? I think not only does it work, but having played Bloodborne recently and this now, I think it works better than the structure of like a Bloodborne. And I'm not an open world guy. I just don't care for open world games for the most part. They're overwhelming and they're samey. And if you look at the Souls structure or the Bloodborne structure, it is a linear difficulty, right? So you might let's say Bloodborne, all right, because in my head, because I just finished, you might finish one of the gravestones and unlock the next one. Well, it's getting progressively more difficult, right? It's a very linear ramp to go from that first town, Old Yorm or whatever, getting all the way up to the final boss when you unlock these headstones. And yes, in Elden Ring, there is a primary path that you can follow with the shards of light, give you that direction. And if you just want to play the pure narrative from start to finish, it does progressively ramp. But in putting it in an open world, and I just got to rave about this because there's so many fucking cool aspects of it. Tone says, Jaffe, the reason you're saying samey is you've only seen 20%. How the fuck do you know what I've seen? I've been underground. I've been to the desert with all the fire people and the crazy rolling machines. I've been to the fields. I've been to the castles. I've been to the tree. Are there more areas? I'm sure there are. But, you know, I've unlocked probably 65% of the map. I'm not saying it's all the same, but it's samey, at least so far. And I've been playing it for 50 fucking hours. But let me talk about the map. Let me talk about why this is so great. Fine, I've only seen half. Maybe that may be great. Then it'll be another feather in its cap. That there's a lot more variety. But so far, not yet. And whatever. I'm still playing it. I love it. It's my favorite game of all time. Jesus Christ, what do you want from me? I have to love everything about it? But listen, the open world aspect of it. So they start you off roughly in the center of this massive fucking map. You can go anywhere, and as you go anywhere at any time, it's not like Zelda where it's like, well, you can't get across the bridge until you get the whistle. You got to get the whistle. You know, there are certain choke points, but not really. You can get on your horse and ride to the end of the map the minute you get the game and run past almost every enemy, and you can see all kinds of cool shit. You get your ass kicked, but you can do it. But as you branch out from that center point in the map, there's varying difficulty. So there's no longer this sense of, well, it's going to get harder, so my only option is to farm and grind, right? When I talk about Metal Gear, and I mean Metal Gear 4, I didn't play 5, but Metal Gear 4, what I loved about that game is it felt so organic in that you could try so many things, and they all kind of worked, right? So in this game, if you're stuck, for example, of course, the obvious, what you get to do in Bloodborne and Souls is, I'll go farm. Let me go build up my blood echoes. Let me go build up my runes. Let me put those into strength. Let me put those into endurance. I'll do a little bit better. And that's awesome. I was addicted to Bloodborne. I don't have a problem with that system. But when you make it open world like this, you have so many more ways to go about the struggle and overcoming a specific struggle. And they flow into each other organically and seamlessly. So I might be stuck on a boss. And so I say, I'm going to get on my horse. I'm going to ride around. I'm going to farm up. And I do that for a little bit. And maybe I get just strong enough to feel comfortable in an area that I was barely comfortable in before. And in that, I discover a character in a side quest. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I'll do that. I do the side quest, I get an item. Suddenly that item, after I found a character to initiate that item, allows me to take down that boss without even farming. For example, I was able to, level up my character and craft items and whatnot to find my way to this place where I could survive long enough, right? And in that, I found this church, and the church had this thing called the Flask of Wondrous Physic. The way it works is you collect these tears, and they do different things, right? They raise stamina, they have a charge your attack power when it's charged, various things, right? And the more you find, the more options you have. Okay, so if you go to a spawn point, and there are many, many spawn points all over the game, you can adjust your alchemy, right? So I currently have 3 different tiers. I have one for restores half of your HP. I have temporary boost stamina, enhances charged attacks. And I can put 2 of them in the flask. So when I drink it, I get whatever that concoction is, right? Well, I wouldn't have found that if I had been able to explore. And now I can take the abilities that come from that, or the stat boost that come from that, and I can either go back and try to fight the bosses that have been too hard for me, or I can use it to push through and find new areas that let me find new items. And then on top of it, you also have the crafting part, right? Which is, it's very, every game has crafting now, at least at this scope. But there's a shit ton of stuff. You basically find pages or buy pages of these various cookbooks, and then you're able to use all these items that you find in the world to create all sorts of things, health things, attack things. These let you set your swords on fire. These are poison darts. And yeah, there's a lot of games that do that, and I could see somebody going, well, isn't that just Breath of the Wild? A lot of people have compared this game to Breath of the Wild. And there are similarities, but in Breath of the Wild, and I never finished it, but I played for about 25 hours, killed 1 or 2 of those guardians or bosses or whatever those were. I found it to be still very broken up, right? I found it to be like, most of the puzzle parts in Breath of the Wild are in the shrines. So it's time for puzzle time, Yeah, you can approach the enemies in different ways, but it doesn't seem to flow from puzzle to item solutions, to stealth solutions, to combat solutions, to just all of these other various items that you can pick up in the game that really do turn the tide of the core game. Here's one I found the other day. Uses magic to mimic nearby objects. I only have one of them, and I kind of don't want to waste it, but I don't know what it does. It's different than Breath of the Wild, and to me it's better than Breath of the Wild in that it's substantially more varied, and those varied elements actually work together versus feeling like separate pieces of the game. Elden Ring just feels like it's one big cohesive experience that you're living versus playing a game. Stealth actually matters. I don't like stealth games, but there are these big giant fucking war machines in the Badlands or whatever it's called, which is like fire and post-apocalyptic or whatever. And it's this metal machine with wheels, and it's a big head, and it spews fire everywhere. And it'll fucking kill you. If you touch the front of it, you're dead, 1 hit. It's deadly. But it's driven by a guy in the back, right? And he's got some hit points, but that's what you have to do. You have to kill the guy in the back, and the machine goes away. Can you kill it from the front? You can, but it's super hard. And so suddenly I'm using stealth for the game. I had been struggling with the trolls, and I finally farmed up enough to become strong enough that I could take them down after a couple of minutes. And then later I unlocked a certain ability that let my sword do this blood attack. And suddenly I'm killing them like fucking squashing ants when I was a kid, right? There's a mechanic where you can summon a variety of familiars. I have wolves here. There's this badass jellyfish. There's skeleton armies that you can also summon to help fight at your side. And those, if you find the right items or people in the world, can also be leveled up and made stronger. There's so many ways to play this game. And they flow into each other. It doesn't just feel like, I'll take the farming route. I'll take the quest route. I'll take the stealth route. And in that not being a delineated path, but more of an organic marbled into the whole experience, it absolutely nails the sense of being on an adventure. It doesn't feel like you're playing the game. It feels like you're living the life of this adventure. And then the piece de resistance, I think, the shit, the tits. I go from classy to not. That's my brain. Is the fact that unlike Ghost of Tsushima, which, like I said, is one of my favorite games of all time, unlike Days Gone, which I loved, it's one of the first open world games I can remember or that I've ever played that fills the open world with a lot of handcrafted content. So it's not like in Ghost where it's like, yes, it's beautiful, But it's pretty much like, imagine a giant map of Tsushima, and then it's like the developer's like, okay, we've got 90% of it is going to be these 12 modular things. There's the sword fighting, there's fighting on horses, there's exploring, blah, blah, blah. And then we have 10% for special cases. Spider-Man does it, Tsushima does it, Ubisoft does it. Well, in this game, holy shit, man, you know, you're wandering through the fucking fields and you find this giant wagon that's being pulled by these trolls that have been chained up to it. And suddenly it's not, you don't have to fight it, you can go past it, or you can say, oh, what the fuck is going on here, right? You find characters scattered all over the world that offer really compelling quests.
Read them. Your fingers. Please, your fingers.
There's also parts where you're just like wandering through the environment, and like in this case, you start seeing more and more foot traffic in the level. And what's really cool about it is, clearly, you may never know in the story, I don't know what it ends up telling you, but you may never know what's going on, but clearly these, like, you know, zombie slave people are being forced to dig and excavate, and they're sort of being controlled by the more human-based characters, right? Well, if you attack and you kill the guys who are watching over them, kind of their masters, the enemies that were enemies will just cower in fear. It's like once the people who have been telling them to be mean have gone away, they don't want any part of this. I mean, it's just details and nuance like that that really adds so much of a sense of being in a real place. This one is one of my favorites. So I'm riding around and I think this is like a rock formation, and it seems though like it's moving, and I get closer and I'm like, holy shit, that's not a rock formation, that's a dragon, and it's still alive. So I explore a little bit. I go around the other side of the dragon, and I realize the dragon is sleeping. And surrounding the dragon, you can kind of see it right now, camouflaged. They look like rocks, but they're actually smaller dragons. Now, they ain't babies. They'll kick your ass. One hit kills these guys. But if you disturb the mama dragon, or you get too close to it, the mama dragon, it roars like a banshee, and as you can see, it starts to wake up the baby dragons, or the littler dragons, and you're in for a fucking fight. I haven't killed a single little one yet. I certainly haven't killed the mama yet. I honestly don't know if I'll ever be powered up enough to do that. But it's fucking awesome. It is such a cool experience. It's not just like, oh, you're in this arena section, now it's time to fight this guy, but it's by the nature of just being in the world, exploring it, and seeing the storytelling so well ingrained in the experience organically. It's amazing. And it feels like they've really put the time into every inch of the map. Now, part of that's hyperbole, but that's the way the game makes you feel. I would not be surprised if you looked at the design document and they said, okay, 50% of our design is going to have to be modular. We'll never finish the game, but here's the tactics here's how we're going to use that modularity to trick the player into thinking it's more handcrafted than it really is. But whatever the technique, the result is that between almost everything you do works, and what you do can be wildly different from moment to moment, and it works. So it feels like you're living. And being in the world does not feel artificial, because there's always things happening that are handcrafted and interesting. I have never played a game that has felt this immersive in my fucking life. I want to be in this world. I want to spend time in this world. My kids are going to a sleepover tonight. I have the place to myself tonight. I can't wait after dinner and after I see them off to just sit for 5, 6, 7 hours and just play all goddamn night. I want to be in the world of Elden Ring. I love it. It's one of my favorite games of all time. If I had to rate the cockadoodie goddamn thing, I would give it a 9 out of 10. As a fun factor, as a piece of engagement, I give it a 10 out of 10. But if you're rating it as a product, you have to accept the fact that the visuals and even the art direction so far, now maybe the 50% I haven't seen will convert me. The art direction, it's fine, but compared to Bloodborne, come on now. Compared to Ratchet and Clank Rift, come on now. And I'm not just talking quality, I'm talking art direction. People are like, art direction's different than graphics. Fine, let's talk art direction. It's fine, it's generic. It's not the most amazing visuals I've ever seen and art direction I've ever seen. Same with the monsters in the game. Some of the monsters are amazing. I fought this one fucking thing that was like a spider with all these fucking arms and body parts hanging off it. It was awesome. The sound is, once you've been spoiled by Microsoft first party and Sony first party sound teams, the level of immersion that the soundscapes from those studios give you is second to none. And when you have visuals that are good, the Elden Ring visuals are good, they're just not best of breed, that are as evocative as the ones are, and they don't bring with it the soundscape at the level, at the audio fidelity that you're used to from other top tier games, it's missing. Now the music is worth talking about because it's very understated. But it's also it's part of it's amazing. Part of the music's just phenomenally cool, and then some of the music is just kind of like, And it's very subtle. The vast majority of the music is ambiance track. The best thing I can remember or compare it to is like Twisted Metal Black. There wasn't a lot of music in that game. It was more, every level had sort of a soundscape that was musical, but there was no like melody to grab onto. This is similar in that I would say 80% of the game is a lot of this sort of violin, just sort of, very somber, long notes played out. It doesn't do much. It almost feels like, well, I'd rather have no music. But then it does some really interesting stuff. Of course, from time to time, when there's a big moment, they'll punch up the music like here. Or when you're fighting enemies, you'll have, the drums kick in and all that, like you're listening to now. But the most interesting part, though, is in that ambiance, they're playing with really weird fucking sounds that, and again, I don't know where this story is going. I don't know if it's got the Lovecraftian stuff from Bloodborne or if it ever gets really fucking weird. I get the sense that it will. But some of that audio that they mix into the ambiance, there's like, this almost sounds like a plane going over. And this right here is just plain fucking eerie. There's certain parts of it that have this very weird 80s synthy flavor to it. It's actually kind of disturbing in a great way. So the music to say is the soundtrack good, the music is really cool, except when it's not. And when it's not, it's kind of, you kind of wish it was better. But it's a minor. It's both a celebration of the soundtrack and a gripe about it, but it's minor regardless. It really doesn't matter. It works for the game. So if I'm rating the whole product, that's where it loses a point. Who cares? It's so stupid. What? Oh, it's 9. It's 10. All I'm saying though is, as a game, it's one of the best things I've ever played. It may end up being my favorite game of all time. I adore it. I love it. Boom. There you go. 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, depending on how you define it. And that's the Elden Ring review. Hope you give it a shot if you're into such malarkey. Thank you.